Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, which means it's Zen Money Monday. And today we are talking with my excellent and exciting and very lots going on friend, Megan Jo Wilson, who is the founder of Rockstar Camp for women and now for men. And I've gotten to work with Megan over the last few years, and she is building an incredible business. And so I wanted her to come on today and talk with us a little bit about what that experience has been like, especially since you came from a non-businessy background originally.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm so happy to be here. I could not do the things I do without your help. So it's an honor and a pleasure.
Megan, can we just get a little, these days you are bringing people together to really explore their voices. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's as a business owner. Sometimes it's just as somebody who feels that they have something deep down to say. Mm-hmm. But you have such an interesting background because you combine a really powerful performance experience with your personal background as an actual rock star living in the Portland, Maine area with your coaching experience. How did all of that come to be?
Yeah. So I have been singing and performing pretty much, since I was a little child. As early as I remember, even pre-5 years old, holding, imaginary concerts around the sandbox. And I always loved singing, and I always loved being on stage. And I actually felt and feel in many ways very safe on stage, which I now know is quite the opposite for many people who can have literal panic attacks about going on stage, anxiety attacks and stage fright and all of those things. And so when I started coaching 15 years ago, as you said, my background was as an artist, as a performer. I had a degree in multimedia. I worked as a chef. I worked as a farmer. I was thinking about getting a master's degree in creative writing. And my brother introduced me to coaching, and I fell in love immediately because it was like all the big, juicy questions that I had been thinking about my whole life. I now got to sit down on purpose with someone and ask things like, what do you want? Who are you being? What's important to you? And what do you want to accomplish before you die? It's like, oh, good. No small talk. We're going to go right into the heart of things.
Which I love because I think you and I both love to just dive into things. We do it in different ways, but you do it so beautifully because not everybody wants to live in that space all the time. Yeah. But also, if we don't live in that space at least some of the time, life kind of passes us by.
Totally. It totally does. So I knew that this was the work I wanted to do, but then I discovered right away that even if you're the best coach in the world, and I was a very solid coach even from the beginning, I had a sort of aptitude for it. What I couldn't do was build a lucrative business with my coaching skills alone. So even if I was the best coach in the world, clients were not magically finding me. That turns out that is not a thing. And that caused me a lot of pain, a lot of stress, a lot of frustration. And I knew that in order to be a full-time coach, I had to work on my money stuff because my background was as a farmer and a chef, so I was used to making about $12,000, $12,000 to $15,000 a year. At best. And, right. And I knew I had to learn how to run a business, which no one had taught me. They don't teach that in coaching school, at least the one I went to. And I had to learn how to market coaching. And what became very clear to me is that marketing is, for me and for a lot of my now clients and people that come to Rockstar Camp, it is tricky, not just because we don't know how to do it, but because it requires being seen and heard as an expert. And that's very confronting.
Very, right? And you're right. So many of us, regardless of whatever stage we're in, I see this in the professional services world too, where it's, I'm really good at something. I'm just going to open my door and hang my shingle and we're good to go. And there's so much more work. People just don't understand how many hours and how much work. And I mean, I think we do sort of in this vague intellectual way, but it can be very hard to consistently slog through that and go, oh my God, what does work? Because it just seems like I'm throwing crap at the wall and I don't know.
Right. And we live in the wild, wild west of coaching and marketing where everyone has access to information. Everyone has access to social media, almost everyone. Anyone can start a business if they want to. And so we have a very saturated market. We have very savvy consumers. People are so tired of being sold to. And so what I started experimenting with, and I had this idea for years, because coaching is a form of leadership development. So for people watching, if you don't know what leadership development is, it just means building the skills that are required to lead something that is bigger than, it could even be something you're doing on your own, but to lead a mission, to lead something that matters requires a lot of skill, and coaching is an incredible leadership competency. And part of what we do in coaching, and a lot of therapeutic models use this too, is what's called parts work. Meaning we all have lots of different parts of ourselves. We have the part of us who, I don't know, like if you've never done coaching, for example, the part of you that shows up one way at a board meeting and shows up differently when you're putting your kid to sleep. Or the part of you that, if you're playing a tennis match, you might be like your fierce competitor might come out. And if you're sitting with your aging father, you have a different part of you comes forth. And so we do a lot of work in bringing those parts to consciousness so that you can choose them as needed. So one of the things I noticed in my own journey, as I said, was when I'm on stage, when I'm performing, when I'm singing, there's a part of me that comes forth.
It's an incredible part, by the way, if anyone has the opportunity to see Megan live on stage, which I have had multiple times. She is an incredible performer, and there's so much authenticity to who you are when you take the stage. It's like a whole veil is lifted and this incredible part of you comes out.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. 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 It's so sweet to hear that. And it's sweet to hear that it comes across as authentic because this parts work thing doesn't mean pretending to be something that you're not. So if you think of the archetype of a rock star, right? Like think of your favorite rock star. What are the qualities that you would use to describe her? I don't know. Like you, Liz, who do you think of? One of your favorite rock stars.
Don't even put me on the spot like that. I can't do these questions this way. But I think everybody has this idea of somebody who's super confident, right? It just takes control the minute she walks on stage.
Yeah.
Can take a crowd from, the lows to the highs and back again and still share a part of herself and be vulnerable and all of those things. And I think, music does all of that. And what I love about how you work with people and how you show up, you lead so authentically in this new iteration of coaching that you're doing, which is really bringing people to music, which is the scariest fuck thing to do. And yet people show up on stage and perform in these incredibly vulnerable, meaningful, rock star kind of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it. So that's it's part of why I think we love rock stars, right? Why we pay hundreds of dollars to go to stadiums and watch these people is that they are so unapologetically confident, bold, take up space, look at me. I expect you to look at me. I want you to look at me. I expect you to applaud me. I expect you to have my meal ready when I want, right? So it's a very almost outrageously confident archetype.
Mm-hmm.
And for many people, women in particular, that is a very undernourished part of ourselves because we live in a culture that tells us we are too fat, too short, too skinny, too tall, too all the body stuff. So
too loud, too
right.
opinionated, too not on track with whatever conversation is being had.
Just flawed in every way. And so we avoid being on stage and being seen and heard in our lives because we have so much shame around being seen and heard. And for many, again, women in particular, if we look at the statistics, we have trauma because we have life experience that when we were seen and heard, that was dangerous. It got us into trouble. It got us violated sexually, emotionally, or otherwise. And so we taught ourselves to hide. We taught ourselves to hide physically. We teach ourselves to hide our ideas. We teach ourselves to basically either apologize for who we are and hide and become invisible, or man up and act like a man and lean into our masculine to be a leader. So Rockstar Camp is not a course that teaches people how to sing or become professional performers, although many of my graduates are now singing all over the place because this part of them has been awakened. It's a leadership development program that's unraveling the shame that we have around being seen and heard. It's unraveling the conditioning we have that I can't do something unless I do it perfectly, because none of these people have ever sung before. They are not professional singers. And nourishing, like putting Miracle Grow on this part of them that knows how to take up space and actually loves it and finds pleasure in it. And it's a lot about including the feminine, which we can talk about like what that means, bringing the feminine into their leadership. And I'm doing this with men as well, which is really exciting. So what happens as a result, right, is people, and this is what happened to me when I started bringing my rock star to my business, to my marketing, to my life when I needed it. And it's not like you always need to be in that space, but sometimes you got to go out there and take up some space and have a damn good time doing it.
Right. And that's exactly what I was going to ask, because I see so many parallels between the journey you take your clients on through Rockstar Camp and the journey we all go on in the business world and behind the scenes, especially if we're a solopreneur or a small startup. And I'm curious from your perspective, sort of what lessons you've learned for yourself in digging through the back end stuff of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, how to manage your money, how to make, decisions about where am I going to put it? How do I, keep my mortgage paid and all of that kind of stuff? And how do I show up in this external sort of very fast paced social media world at the same time?
Right. For many years before I started Rockstar Camp, I was supporting coaches in building lucrative businesses. As you know, I had a program called The Warrior's Way, and it was only about teaching the how-to coaches of how to market, price and package your coaching, how to receive money, how to charge money.
And this was just so everybody listening understands, because you've done a lot of sort of in corporate leadership training as well. Yeah. Worked with people who are sort of personal coaches, life coaches. So sort of the term coaching can mean a lot of different things, and you've really seen the gambit. And now when you're doing coaching that isn't part of your business, it's really to train other people to be good leadership development coaches.
Yeah. And I believe that being an entrepreneur and running a business is the most intense personal growth path you could possibly choose, because there's no way that you will be successful unless you're willing to every day face your fear, look at yourself, make mistakes, be rejected, fail in public, not hit your targets, fail in public again, succeed, which is also terrifying, because what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like it sounds so fun on paper. I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
I know. I'm going to set my own
Right.
hours. I'm going to play with my kids. I'm going to
Right.
make a ton of money, and I'm going to have a great time. Mm.
And it totally is all of those things, which is so cool. It's totally all of those things. And what I think a lot of people do talk about it actually, but it's when you go into it, it just sounds like fun because you're conscious, you're like in unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just so sick of working for other people, and you see people making six figures and you think that sounds like a lot of fun. But actually it takes a ton of courage and a ton of grit and a ton of commitment and a ton of mental discipline and spiritual discipline. And so what I've learned is running a business is totally gratifying. It's totally fulfilling. What I'm doing is completely aligned with who I am and why I'm here, which is all very exciting. And it's really challenging. It's really challenging on an almost daily basis and requires personal growth and personal evolution all the time. And you and I talk about this a lot too, because as your money changes, money's a fascinating thing around this too, right? Because we think when I make X amount, I will be complete.
Mm-hmm.
I will be happy. I will have no more problems. And it's not true. You'll have different problems.
Right.
You will always have problems, and you'll always have challenges. And that feeling never, ever goes away.
It doesn't. I was talking with our mutual
friend
Angela Laurie about this on a recent episode as well, because it doesn't matter whether you're making six figures or eight figures or beyond. It's that feeling of, I haven't quite we never know when we finally hit the goal, And I think when you get into it, you have this idea that I'll just replace my salary or a little bit more, and then life will be fantastic and I'll just sit back and enjoy that. It's kind of like, I'll get my inheritance a couple of years in, and then I just won't have to do anything. I can kind of loaf off and, explore other parts of myself. And as we all know, a business doesn't, the minute we start to plateau, we decline. So, from that perspective, what is the biggest challenge for you? Because I know that one of the things we've worked on a lot has been, because the money conversation was not comfortable for you for a long time.
It still often isn't.
I'm curious from your perspective, two things. One, do you feel, this is a question for me in the work that you've done, do you feel like there are a particular type of people who are, are more likely to be successful as entrepreneurs in the same way that there are certain types of people who are maybe wired to be rock stars? Or do you think it can be a learned behavior?
I know it can be learned. Because I teach it. But part of really one of the reasons I started building Rockstar Camp is because as I was teaching coaches how to build a business, the people who were succeeding were the people that were willing to be seen and heard in public. I would say, here's how you do it. Here's what you need to do. You need to market yourself. You need to know who you're serving. There's some tactical stuff. You need to know whose problems you're solving and who's your ideal client. But then you have to go out and talk about it. You have to put your voice in the thousands of voices that are out there, and you're going to have to do it over and over and over again. And most of the time it's not going to work.
Yeah. That's the part that's so hard. It's
right.
95% of it is just going to be crickets, and it doesn't mean there isn't stuff percolating, but it can be so demoralizing emotionally to manage that. Especially when you're managing ups and downs with money and the what ifs and all of that other, real life stuff that goes along with it.
Yes. So the people that were succeeding were willing to go out and do that and to see their failures as a learning and to keep going and to be totally committed. And one of the things, like the surprising power of including the feminine in leadership development. So feminine is not just about being a woman, right? Like we all have masculine and feminine energy. Feminine energy is about connection, pleasure, intuition. It's about outrageousness. It's about fun. It's non-linear. It's non-logical. It's it's very much about community and connection, right? So our culture is totally bent towards masculine. Being productive, being logical, being linear, taking action, being strong.
Earning money. Let's just bring that back to that conversation, right? Just very accumulation oriented too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's masculine. I think that's patriarchal consumerism culture.
That's a good way to define it. Sure.
So the patriarchal consumeristic culture we live in is all about no pain, no gain, profits over people, just keep working even if you're exhausted. You know, and that's not necessarily masculine, but that's certainly the culture we live in. And the best way, what we're taught to survive that, is through masculine. And so when you bring feminine into earning money, even, and running a business, this is the surprising key that my rock stars know, is that if it's not a pleasure, if they're not having fun at least part of the time, it will not be sustainable.
Yeah.
It will just, what would be the point anyway? You could just go be miserable working for someone else. And by the way, if you work for someone else, you can find pleasure in doing that as well. And so it's like folding in pleasure and fun and outrageousness and deep expression of emotion is prioritized in this model. And when people do that, not only do they have more fun, which is worth its weight in gold, but they take more action and they put themselves out there, and then they're doing their unique expression of who they are as a leader.
And people come to them for that. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a direct translation to what can actually happen in your business. And the more people you're drawing to you, then the more opportunities you have to work with them, which means the more money you have in your resource pool to grow your business, to pay yourself, to put your kids through college, whatever it might be. What do you feel has been the most difficult thing on your business growth journey, particularly around the money conversation?
The most difficult is, I think, gosh, it's so interesting. I don't spend a lot. I'm like, what's the most difficult thing?
I don't think about hard stuff. I want to think about stuff I can.
I know, it's such a good question though. So there's a lot that's difficult about it. I mean, money is a really fascinating subject. And what I know is that the amount of money that any entrepreneur can make is unlimited. No one's going to come in and say, you're making too much money. You got to stop. Out. You quit. You've reached the limit. So that's very exciting. And
kind of overwhelming too, I think.
It's kind of overwhelming. It requires actually owning your authority. And owning your value. And if you don't have if you're not rooted in self-worth of your own value as a person, which is, by the way, not what people are paying for. They're paying you for a solution. But we can collapse those things and think oh, they're paying for me. And I'm not. And if I have self-worth issues, then I'm not going to charge that much.
Right.
And it's such a relative thing. I have coaching friends who have less training than me and charge 10 times as much.
Interesting.
It's that's interesting. It's so arbitrary. That's what's tricky for me about money. It's so arbitrary in a way, what you can charge. You can charge anything. And the thing that's most confusing to people, especially in terms of coaching, is that it's actually easier to sell higher priced coaching if you stand in your authority.
Yeah. And deliver the solution.
And deliver the solution. But that is a very tricky thing for me because I have a lot of wiring from my childhood and my experience as a chef, and that there's not enough and we can't afford it. And so I think people who grow up in poverty are always scared that that could be just right around the corner. I remember seeing an interview with some famous hip hop star. I can't remember, Pitbull, I think it was, who was like, I grew up poor. I could have $1 million in my bank account. I'm always afraid that tomorrow I'm going to lose it all.
Right. Our mental inside version is completely disconnected with our actual current reality a lot of the time. Like we always go back to that old story.
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that's true for many people. I'm also very cognizant of our time here. So I want to make sure I have a chance to ask you the question that I ask everybody. So we talked about stuff that you've found hard. I'm curious from your perspective, your definition of Zen money, since we're talking about Zen Money Monday.
Yeah. So for me, it's the being and the doing, which is what coaching is all about. And so I have to be in a right frame of mind and a right frame of being in order to do the things that are required. And what you always help me do is notice the thoughts and the perspectives and how I'm viewing my money. It's just money. It's just money. There's a lot of systems that go along with managing money that are very intimidating and overwhelming. As you know, like I can just shut down. I'm like, oh my God.
Spreadsheets. Oh no.
Yeah, no, I love spreadsheets. For me, it's like when it gets into like investing,
bigger pieces of the sort of strategic conversation,
the lingo of money, you know, dividends and like invest. I don't know. There's like certain lingo around it. That and healthcare insurance. I'm telling you, it's like, why can't you just speak English?
You're not the only one who gets triggered by that stuff.
Yeah, so it's being in an empowered state of mind and state of being so that I am more powerful than my money. I'm in control of my money. My money is not controlling me.
Yeah.
That's Zen money to me.
I love that definition because it takes the emotional stuff away, strips it away, and just lets it be the tool that it is in your life. Megan, thank you so much for joining us today. We will put links as to where people can find you. Are there any particular sites or anything you want to share with the audience before we sign off?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I would just say if you are at all curious to like learn more of what Rockstar Camp is about, it's a 2-month program. It's a 3-day retreat. The best place to go is my website, which is just www.meganjowilson.com, meganjowilson.com. I post stuff on Facebook all the time about things that are happening. You can watch concerts, but if you go to that website, you know, there's like learn more and apply, and then you can apply and talk to me or someone else about whether it's a fit and how it works. And I just want to reiterate that it's not like singing talent is not required. You will be singing on stage. And if that terrifies you, pay attention to that, because if you can say yes to things that terrify you, you will have a very successful life and business.
That is a fantastic place to stop. I highly encourage everyone to check out the work that Megan's doing, if only to follow her on social media, because there's always something fun happening. Thank you so much for sharing your morning with us.
Thank you for the work that you do and the work that you've done to help me. I'm just so grateful. Go hire Liz immediately. We'll help you with your money.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Yes. Talk to you soon.